They seem almost impossible, a perfect storm of talent, timing, and star power that might never happen again. But one record stands completely alone. Only a single artist has ever achieved 7 consecutive #1 singles on the Billboard Hot 100. That artist was Whitney Houston. She was, quite simply, the voice. A global superstar who had a gift that felt like it came from another stratosphere, blending technical perfection with a soul so deep it could leave you breathless. She had it all: the beauty, the charm, and a voice that didn't just define a generation. It was the generation. But the higher you fly, the further there is to fall. And the more the world watched, the more she had to hide. This is the story of that once-in-a-lifetime talent, of a record that may never be broken, and of how the voice that captivated the world was nearly silenced by the secrets she couldn't share. To understand that voice, you have to know where it came from. Whitney Houston wasn't some overnight success cooked up in a record label's boardroom. She was musical royalty. Her mother was the legendary Cissy Houston, a Grammy-winning gospel and soul singer who backed up icons like Elvis Presley and Aretha Franklin. Her cousins, Dionne and Dee Dee Warwick, both hitmakers. For Whitney, music wasn't just in her blood. It was the language she learned from birth. She started her journey where so many of the greats do, in the church. It was at the New Hope Baptist Church in Newark, New Jersey, that a young Whitney first felt the power of her own gift. Gospel didn't just teach her notes and harmonies. It taught her how to feel a song, how to pour emotion into every line, and connect with a congregation, a skill she would one day use to connect with the entire world. While still a teenager, she was already a pro, singing backup for her mother in New York City clubs. Around the same time, she was discovered as a model, gracing the covers of magazines like 17 and Glamour. In fact, she was one of the first African-American women to ever be on the cover of 17. But everyone knew her real calling was the stage, not the page. Her mother, Cissy, wisely insisted she turn down recording contracts until she finished high school. There was no rush. They knew what they had. Then came the moment that changed everything. In 1983, the legendary record executive Clive Davis, the man who discovered artists like Janis Joplin and Bruce Springsteen, was urged by his A&R team to see a young woman performing at a New York club called Sweetwater's. Davis had heard thousands of singers and was not easily impressed. But that night was different. When Whitney stepped out to perform her 2 solo numbers, Davis was, in his own words, stunned. One of those songs was The Greatest Love of All, a track he had commissioned years earlier. Hearing her breathe a new fire and passion into it, he knew he was witnessing the arrival of a truly historic talent. He had to sign her. And after a bidding war with other labels, Houston signed with Davis and Arista Records, launching one of the most successful partnerships in music history. Clive Davis didn't rush it. He knew he'd found a diamond and spent the next 2 years meticulously finding the perfect setting, curating the songs and producers to craft a superstar. In 1985, the world was formally introduced to her with the self-titled album, Whitney Houston. The album was a slow burn, but it was powerful. The first hit, You Give Good Love, climbed into the top 10, showcasing her mature, soulful R&B side. But it was the next one, Saving All My Love for You, that became her first #1 hit on the Billboard Hot 100. Now the world was really paying attention. The hits just kept coming. The bubbly, infectious How Will I Know and the soaring ballad Greatest Love of All both topped the charts, too. This made her the first debut artist and the first female artist to ever have 3 #1 singles from one album. The album itself went on to sell more than 25 million copies worldwide, becoming the best-selling debut by a solo artist at the time. In the golden age of MTV, her image was just as powerful as her voice. She was presented as America's princess, elegant, graceful, with a radiant smile that could light up any screen. She wasn't rebellious like her rock contemporaries, or overtly sexual like rising stars such as Madonna. She was wholesome, accessible, and beloved by everyone. This carefully crafted image was key to her massive crossover success, but it also built a gilded cage. The pressure to be perfect was immense. The world wanted an angel, and for a while, that's exactly what she gave them. The follow-up album, released in 1987, carried an insane amount of pressure. Titled simply Whitney, it made history the moment it dropped, becoming the first album by a female artist to ever debut at #1 on the Billboard 200 chart. The sound was bigger, poppier, and built for global domination. And that's exactly what it did. This album would set the stage for a record-breaking run that would cement her name in history forever. The historic run had started with the last 3 singles from her debut, but it was the Whitney album that launched her into the stratosphere. The first single, I Want to Dance with Somebody Who Loves Me, was a joyful pop explosion that became a global anthem and her 4th consecutive #1. It was followed by the powerhouse ballad Didn't We Almost Have It All, making it 5 in a row. The upbeat So Emotional came next, giving her a 6th, tying her with the Beatles and the Bee Gees. Then, on April 23, 1988, it happened. The ballad Where Do Broken Hearts Go climbed to the top of the Billboard Hot 100. 7 consecutive #1 singles. It was a record that nobody, not Elvis, not the Beatles, not Michael Jackson, had ever achieved. It's a feat that remains untouched to this day. She wasn't just a star anymore. She was the biggest star in the world. And just when you thought she couldn't get any bigger, she did. In 1992, she co-starred with Kevin Costner in The Bodyguard. She was hesitant to take the acting role, but Costner championed her for it. The movie was a massive box office hit, but the soundtrack was a global event. Co-executive produced by Whitney herself, the album sold over 45 million copies worldwide, making it the best-selling soundtrack of all time. At the heart of it was one song, a Dolly Parton classic that Kevin Costner insisted she record, I Will Always Love You. From its quiet, a cappella opening to that earth-shattering final chorus, the song was a vocal masterpiece. It spent a record-breaking 14 weeks at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and topped the charts in nearly every country on the planet. It became her signature song. The Bodyguard soundtrack was so dominant that she won the Grammy for Album of the Year. Whitney Houston was at the absolute zenith of the entertainment world. From the outside, her life was a fairy tale. But behind the curtain, a very different story was starting to unfold. While Whitney was conquering the world professionally, her personal life was taking a sharp, dramatic turn. In 1989, at the Soul Train Music Awards, she met Bobby Brown. Brown was the bad boy of R&B, a charismatic star with a reputation for trouble. He was, in every way, the polar opposite of Whitney's clean, America's princess image, and she was completely captivated. Their relationship was passionate and intense. Friends and family were worried, but Whitney was defiant. She felt that with Bobby, she could finally be herself and escape the perfect image she'd grown to hate. They married in a lavish ceremony in 1992, the same year The Bodyguard made her the biggest star on earth. The union of the pop princess and the R&B rebel was a gift to the tabloids. The press that had built her up as an angel now seemed obsessed with documenting her fall. Their marriage was, by most accounts, turbulent. It also coincided with a period where Whitney's rumored struggles with drug use reportedly grew more serious. The pressure of her fame was unimaginable. The need to be perfect had taken its toll, and it seemed she was looking for an escape. a rebellion against the controlled world built around her. Adding another layer of pressure was her intensely close relationship with her best friend and assistant, Robin Crawford. For years, they were inseparable, and Crawford was Whitney's fierce protector. Decades later, in her 2019 memoir, Crawford confirmed what had been rumored for years, that their relationship had been romantic in their early days before fame changed everything. This was a secret she felt she had to keep to protect her career and please her family, adding another profound weight to the burden she was already carrying. The world knew Whitney Houston, the character, but the cost of playing that part was becoming dangerously high. By the late 1990s, the cracks were becoming impossible to hide. Her behavior grew more and more erratic. She'd show up hours late to interviews and photo shoots if she showed up at all. Major concerts were canceled last minute, with illness often cited as the reason. Her appearance changed dramatically, with severe weight loss fueling tabloid speculation about her health and drug use. But the most heartbreaking change was to the one thing that had always been sacred: her voice. The voice, once so powerful and clear, was audibly suffering. In live shows, she struggled to hit the soaring notes that once seemed so easy. Her smooth tone became raspy and strained. For her fans, hearing her voice falter was more terrifying than any headline. It was the sound of a gift being lost in real time. The private struggle became brutally public in a 2002 interview with Diane Sawyer. Meant to promote her new album, Just Whitney, the interview became infamous. When Sawyer confronted her about drug use, Houston, looking frail and defensive, admitted to using substances but then delivered a line that would haunt her forever. Asked specifically about crack cocaine, she recoiled and said, "First of all, let's get one thing straight. Crack is cheap. I make too much money to ever smoke crack. Let's get that straight, okay? We don't do crack. We don't do that. Crack is whack." Crack is whack became a cruel national punchline, replayed endlessly on late-night TV. While she may have meant it as a denial, it came across as a bizarre, flippant confirmation of how severe her problems were. Later in that same interview, Sawyer asked Whitney to name her biggest devil. With a haunting, hollow smile, she replied, "That would be me." It was a chilling glimpse of self-awareness in the midst of the chaos. The world was watching a tragedy unfold, often with mockery instead of compassion. Whitney's music touched millions, and her story is a powerful reminder of the human behind the icon. What is your favorite Whitney Houston song, and what memory does it hold for you? Share your stories in the comments below. It's a way for us to remember the incredible legacy she left behind. After years of public struggles and her 2007 divorce from Bobby Brown, there was a glimmer of hope. Whitney seemed ready to reclaim her life and career. She went back into the studio with her mentor, Clive Davis, and in 2009 released the album I Look to You. It debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200, and fans eagerly embraced songs like $1 Million Bill. It truly felt like the start of one of music's greatest comebacks. But the world tour that followed showed just how much damage had been done. Reviews were often brutal. Fan videos showed a Whitney who was a shadow of her former self, often breathless and unable to finish songs. Her voice, while showing flashes of its old brilliance, was frail and inconsistent. The comeback that had begun with so much promise had turned into a painful public struggle. Still, she kept fighting. In the weeks before her death, she was reportedly optimistic, working on new music and excited about her role in the movie Sparkle. She was even taking steps to heal her voice from years of smoking. But on February 11th, 2012, the night before the Grammy Awards, the fight ended. Whitney Houston was found unresponsive in the bathtub of her Beverly Hilton hotel room. She was only 48 years old. The coroner's report cited accidental drowning, with heart disease and cocaine use as contributing factors. The news sent a shockwave of grief around the globe. The voice that had provided the soundtrack for a generation was gone forever. To remember Whitney Houston only for the tragedy of her final years is to miss the point entirely. Her struggles were real, a devastating cautionary tale about the crushing weight of fame and addiction. But her legacy is so much bigger than its painful last chapter. Musically, she is without peer. She set a new standard for what a vocalist could be, inspiring generations of singers from Mariah Carey and Beyoncé to Jennifer Hudson. Her fusion of gospel, R&B, and pop created the blueprint for the modern diva. The records she set, especially those 7 consecutive number ones, point to a level of dominance that's hard to even comprehend today. With over 220 million records sold worldwide, she remains one of the best-selling artists in history. Her posthumous induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2020 was a final, fitting tribute to her monumental impact. Whitney Houston was more than a singer. She was a cultural force. She broke down racial barriers on MTV and pop radio, opening doors for countless Black artists. Her performance of The Star-Spangled Banner at the 1991 Super Bowl is still widely considered the definitive version, a moment of national unity created by the power of a single voice. Her life was a complex story of heavenly gifts and earthly burdens. The secret she kept may have contributed to her downfall, but the voice she shared with the world will live forever.